That cabinet can't leave. The CEO's voice cracked through the showroom like a whip, sharp enough to slice the laughter in half. Crystal glasses trembled in manicured hands. Conversations died mid-sentence. And in the center of the polished marble floor, beneath chandeliers that glittered like cold stars, a single father in a faded navy work shirt tightened his grip on solid oak, and lifted. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of ordinary people, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stories like this remind us that dignity doesn't wear a title, it lives in the heart. The event was meant to celebrate power. A luxury furniture company had unveiled its most exclusive handcrafted collection in a downtown showroom that smelled of polished wood and expensive perfume. Executives in tailored suits circled like royalty. Influencers filmed content beside velvet sofas. And at the center of it all stood Gregory Halston, the company's CEO, a man known for his sharp mind, sharper tongue, and an ego that filled every room before he did. The cabinet was the crown jewel of the evening. Imported Italian walnut, gold inlays, hand-carved lion feet, more sculpture than furniture. It had been placed on a raised platform as if it were a throne. Gregory had just finished boasting that it required precision machinery and a team of trained professionals to move it safely. His laughter rang loud when a server accidentally brushed against it earlier, nearly tipping a champagne flute. Then Daniel Ruiz stepped forward. Daniel wasn't on the guest list. He worked for the logistics company hired to deliver and install the collection. At 38, he carried himself with the quiet fatigue of someone who hadn't slept enough in years. His broad shoulders and calloused hands told the story of long shifts and heavier burdens. A small ink smudge peeked from beneath his sleeve. The corner of a crayon drawing his 6-year-old daughter had slipped into his pocket that morning, a reminder that he was her superhero. He had arrived late because the babysitter cancelled. Again. He had tucked his daughter Sophia into the back seat of his aging pickup, dropped her at a neighbor's apartment with promises of pizza later, and raced across town praying he wouldn't lose the job. He couldn't afford to. Not with rent overdue and hospital bills still stacked from the winter she'd fallen sick. When he overheard Gregory bragging about how no single man could budge that cabinet, something inside him stirred, not pride, not anger, but something deeper. It was the same quiet resolve that had carried him through nights rocking Sophia through fevers, through mornings packing her lunches before dawn, through whispered promises that everything would be okay even when he wasn't sure it would. The cabinet needed repositioning for the photographers. The specialized equipment hadn't arrived yet. The room buzzed with inconvenience. Gregory waved dismissively at Daniel when he offered to move it manually. A few executives chuckled. Someone muttered that it would be entertaining. That cabinet can't leave, Gregory declared again, smirking as if daring gravity itself to disagree. Daniel stepped onto the platform without another word. The oak surface felt cool beneath his palms. He crouched, muscles coiling, breath steady. The room watched with amused curiosity, expecting a spectacle of failure. What they didn't see were the memories flashing behind his eyes, Sophia's tiny hand gripping his finger as she learned to walk, the way she'd looked at him when she asked if he was strong enough to fix anything. He had smiled then, even though his back ached and his heart felt heavier than any piece of furniture. He lifted. At first, nothing happened. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Gregory folded his arms. Then the cabinet shifted. A subtle scrape echoed across marble. Daniel adjusted his stance, veins rising along his forearms like braided rope. The tendons in his neck stood out, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack stone. The cabinet rose, slowly, impossibly, off its carved lion feet. The laughter stopped. The photographers lowered their cameras. A woman gasped, her champagne tilting dangerously in her glass. Even Gregory's smile faltered. Daniel didn't roar or show off. He simply bore the weight, step by deliberate step, carrying the cabinet across the platform as if it were no heavier than the responsibility he carried every day. When he set it down precisely where the lighting director had requested, the sound of wood meeting marble echoed like a final note in a symphony. Silence swallowed the room. For a moment, the only sound was Daniel's breathing, deep, controlled, human. Sweat glistened on his temples. His work shirt clung to his back. He straightened slowly, not looking for applause. Gregory cleared his throat, but no words came. The power dynamic had shifted, invisible yet undeniable. The cabinet that couldn't leave had moved. And so had something else, respect. An older executive, a woman who had built the company's first overseas branch decades earlier, stepped forward. Her eyes were sharp, but not unkind. She asked Daniel how long he'd been in logistics. He answered plainly. She asked about his family. He hesitated, then mentioned Sophia, how she loved drawing castles and believed her father could lift mountains. The woman smiled. Word traveled quickly through the crowd. The narrative of the evening transformed. It was no longer about the exclusivity of handcrafted wood, it was about the man who had lifted it alone. A few guests began clapping softly. Then louder. Applause swelled until it filled the showroom more richly than the chandelier light ever could. Gregory tried to reclaim control with a stiff handshake and a forced laugh, calling it a team-building moment. But the air had changed. For the first time, he seemed smaller than his title. Later that night, as the event wound down, the older executive approached Daniel again. She spoke to him privately about a supervisory role opening in operations, steady hours, better pay, benefits. She said the company needed people who understood weight, not just of objects, but of responsibility. Daniel drove home with the offer letter folded carefully in his pocket. He stopped for pizza like he had promised. Sophia ran into his arms when he picked her up, asking if he had lifted anything heavy that day. He laughed softly and told her he had lifted something important. Weeks later, Daniel stood in a modest office overlooking the warehouse floor, wearing a clean button-down shirt that still felt unfamiliar. He watched his team move shipments with precision and care. He led not with volume, but with example. When new hires struggled, he showed them patience instead of mockery. As for Gregory, he learned something that evening he never publicly acknowledged, that leadership isn't proven by declaring what can't be done, but by recognizing the quiet strength in those who do it anyway. And maybe that cabinet was never the heaviest thing in that room. Maybe the real weight was doubt. And a single father had lifted that too. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who carries more than the world sees, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need hope today. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word strength if you believe true power comes from love and responsibility, not titles. Because somewhere tonight, another single parent is lifting something heavy. And they deserve to know the world sees them. This was more than a cabinet. It was proof that the strongest people in the room are often the ones no one thought to applaud, until they rise.